Morning.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Art 196, which is Introduction to Designing Computer Graphics for the spring semester 2022. This week, we're going to be, or today especially, we're going to be focusing on images, working with images in Dreamweaver, how to insert them, how to edit them, and so on. There's two files that we have here. Let's look at the finished versions first. So you'll notice in the Contact Us page that we created, we've added images of the people for in each of these little sections that we created. Okay, now they've already prepared the images for us. And some of the things that the textbook asks us to do have been deprecated. So I'll do my best to let you know what those are. It's best, let's put it this way, it's best if you prepare your images in Photoshop first. And that anytime you need to edit them, go back to Photoshop, save them, and refresh. So that's what I would recommend. Try to get as close to the size when you're in Photoshop that you need. If it's a little bit larger, that's okay. You can always shrink it down a little bit in here, change the size of it. Let's do a little bit of review on the kinds of images that you can bring in here. Remember, the file types there's only three. There's JPEG, GIF, and PNG, and that is it. You can't bring in any other types of images. Now, having said that, there are some scalable vector graphics that can be brought in, SVGs, but that's not what we're focusing on right now. These are photographs, those kinds of images, what I'm talking about. So we're going to bring in some images of these people that'll be put into each of the sections that we created in previous lesson. And then in the last one, we have news finished. There we go. And we'll bring in two photographs into this. You'll see that there is a skyline image that goes inside the section that we created. And at the bottom, there is a little image here that's going to go, what is it? It's just outside shopping, and would be something you would see, a grocery in Europe. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to look at the start file first. So let's go ahead and look at Contact Us. And this is where we were left off, okay, from one of the previous lessons. So what we want to do now is begin to insert images into each of these. And there's a variety of ways that you can do it. What I'm going to do, though, is probably the safest way of doing that, is that inside the first paragraph of the first section and here, select it and make sure that you see the little cursor flashing in there. And if you wanted to actually add text by hand, you could do that. But what we want to do is insert an image into this portion of the section or the paragraph. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to Insert. And what I want to do is Insert Image. And I want to nest it inside here. I don't want it before the paragraph tag. I don't want it after the paragraph tag. I want it nested inside this. Okay. When I click, it brings up the dialog box or the little window that shows, and it should show your image folder that you have for lesson 10. Again, if I could, another reminder, remember that when you're working on lesson 10, be sure to change your root folder to lesson 10 and make sure that the image folder that is connected is the one that is sits within the lesson 10 folder. So what we want to do here is Elaine is the first person. So I'm going to select her. And if I wanted to switch from list to icons or columns, we can do that. This is my favorite, just selecting Elaine here, okay? And if you select Eric, you can see him, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and select her. And is it a line that I want to bring in here or not? Yeah, it is. It's a line. Okay. So we have her, and I'm going to go ahead and click open. And you'll notice that it inserts just fine, but the text doesn't wrap around it very well. And we want the text to wrap around the right side of the image, and then whatever text is left over to drop down beneath it, just as what you see here. But the first line of the text is it. That's all that's represented here. So what we need to do is we need to create a selector for this. And depending on whether you want it on the left side or the right side will determine, we'll need to make two selectors to do this. So I'm going to go back to CSS Designer. And what I want to do is make sure that I have green styles selected. And we're going to go ahead and make sure that we have global selected. Excuse me. And I'm going to create a brand new selector for this. Okay. I'm going to go ahead here. And what I want is float. So I'm going to put .flt underscore right, or RHT, RGT. You can put it whatever you want. You just have to remember what you've named it. So we have float. So in this particular instance, we're going to use something called a float. I'm going to hit the return key twice. And what I want to do here, since it's going to be floating to the right, we want to make sure that we have padding to the left. So I'm going to go ahead here and make sure that we have a little bit of padding. I'm going to make that 10 pixels. That's what the book recommends. I would not use any less than 10 pixels for padding. I would probably increase it to 15 or 20. Okay. And here's the float property beneath the position. So we want to make sure that this floats to the right. Okay. So right is selected. Now I need to go ahead and add that selector up here to the image, and it should jump over to the right. So I'm going to put in .flt underscore there we go, GT. And there we go. It floats to the right, and notice the padding. You could also use margins instead of padding. Really doesn't matter. Let me go ahead and change that and see what the difference would be. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the padding, and notice that it butts right up against the image. You always need, just the important reminder, and it's a good design principle anyway, excuse me again, that you need some air, between the photograph and text. You need some air between photograph and everything, or images, text, and everything, in order to give the viewer a reasonable amount of space for their eyes to move around and through. So let's try, instead of using padding, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the margins to the left. We don't need any margins to the top or bottom or anything. We're just going to use to the left. Okay. And notice we got the same results. So margins might be a better choice than using padding. So I'm going to leave it at that. And now we're going to do the same for the ones to the right. Okay. And then once you've set up your floats for left and right, notice that the text, that it pushed the image all the way to the right, and it allowed a little bit of space by adding the margins to the left of her. The text floats around her nicely. Okay. We don't get the single line anymore, just will float up here really, really well, and looks presentable. It looks ideally just, the way we want it. So let's do the same down here for Sarah. So I'm going to click in here. Before I move on, other ways of changing images. So let's do it for Sarah. Okay. There's a number of ways that you can insert images if you wish. You don't have to always insert it that way. I'm going to go ahead and insert Elaine again and show you that, oh, I made a mistake. How do I change it? So I'm going to go ahead again and under insert, I want to insert an image and I want it nested. And where do I want it? This one, I'm going to go ahead and use Elaine again, just to show you what happens if you insert the incorrect one by mistake. I mean, yes, you can always delete it. We want this one to be float left, but before I make it a float left, let's go and swap out the image. So to do that, what we can do is I can go back to my files, okay, and I can, let's close that up. Let's look at inside our image folder. Image. Okay. And we can see that we need to use the image of Sarah instead. So with the image selected in our properties panel, you'll notice that there's a couple of little images to the right. You'll notice that the source says image, it's in the image folder, and the name of the file is elaine.jpg. Now, if I want to change that or swap it out, or if I want to, I can either use this little target, or I can click on the folder and it will take me to my image folder. I'm going to use the target. That's one of my favorites. So I'm going to click here and drag it to Sarah. And as soon as I do that, it should swap out. There we go. She's swapped out. It took a couple of seconds to do that, but it did. It worked just fine. So I like the little target thing just fine. A couple of other things. There used to be more editing that you could do in Dreamweaver, but they have eliminated most of that. And what they make available to you now is that if you click on edit, it's going to ask you, do you want to edit this in Photoshop, which is what you can do anyway. The problem that I am having with it right now is that I have the newest version, 2022, installed, and I no longer have the version 2020 or 2021, and so it doesn't recognize that I can use that. But you can always go back to Photoshop, edit it, save it in your root folder, your image folder within your root folder, and then refresh, and it will come up just fine. Again, you can change the width and the height in pixels. You can lock it down and make sure that the proportions are intact. And then the next thing that I want to point out is that for every image that you use to make your website ADA compliant, and it's by law, and it's something that it's just good practice, you need to add what is called an alt tag. That's found right here. Okay. And so what you would do here is add in here with the image selected, Sarah is in charge of all events and classes. Now, what happens here is that when a person who is seeing impaired views the website and the reader reads the pages to them, when it comes to the image, it will read the alt tag and alert them to the fact that there is an image there. And because it is an important image, it will tell them who and what this is about, depending on what you put in here. Okay. So another way of switching images, and I said you can also click on the little folder, browse your folder, and it will also take you to your root folder. It will just take a minute for it to bring it up, but there it is. It just took us back again to the image folder contained within our root folder. I don't want to swap that out. So just as I did before, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make a float so that she floats to the left, not to the right, and make sure that the type wraps around the image. So I need to go back to insert, not insert, what am I saying? I need to go to CSS Designer. Make sure that green styles is selected and global is selected. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to add another one here. And this is going to be float left. Okay, so dot, because it is a class, FLT, and then underscore LFT, left. Okay, so similar to what we did before with the right, we're going to do with the float left. There we go. So, but this time I want the padding or the margins to be on the right, since it will be to the left. So I'm going to go ahead and add 10 pixels here. And then what I want to do, below padding where it says float, I want to make sure that it floats left. Okay. Now, nothing has happened to it because we have not added that class to the image. So I click on the little plus sign and I'll type in dot float underscore left, LFT, hit the return key. And there you go. The type wraps around the image beautifully. And if you wanted to, you could add a slight amount of margin to the bottom. You'll notice that it's pretty tight here to the left. So I'm going to show you what I would do. I'm going to select the margin here. Oh, it didn't show anymore. I thought I added it. Yeah, it did add it to the right. Okay, so I'm going to boost it up a little bit. And I'm going to crank it all the way up to the 20 pixels. Okay. That, I think, looks much better. And we might even, to the image, go ahead and make sure that there's a little bit more space below the image. I'm going to add at least maybe 5 pixel margin on the bottom. Again, it's totally up to you. Let's see, there we go. Now, maybe that's too much. Not enough. I mean, if you want, you can, tinker with it a little bit until you get something that works for you. Let's just say 3 pixels. Yeah, it's not bad. It's better. But I don't like it when the type is bumps right up against the image itself. So these images have already been prepared for us. Now, when we switch to these others, for example, for Eric, go ahead and ignore those parts of the lesson because what they do is they offer up a TIFF file. And so if you try to drag those in, if we go to, let's go ahead and click where Eric is. That's Lynn. Let's go to see where Eric is here. So if I click here and I go that I want to now insert an image and I say that I want to nest it. Okay, let's go to, I need to go into resources. Let me switch from there. Lesson 10 resources, because this is where they have deprecated things from the lesson. And we can see over here that we have, that was Matthew. Well, let's try to use Matthew. Notice that it's a TIFF file and it does not recognize it. It does not recognize a Photoshop file anymore. If you have a smart object in here, it doesn't recognize it anymore. So those features have been deprecated. So it's best if you want to open a TIFF file, open up Matthew, just open it directly into in Photoshop, save a copy of it as a JPEG or PNG, and then bring it in as we've done with these two. So the next 2 or 3 are going to be alternate, just like we've done here. So I'll do one more. I'm going to go ahead again. So we're going to click here and I'll go ahead and insert There's a different way that I'm going to try to insert, and I haven't had much success. You're supposed to be able to doing it this way. If I go back to Files and I select Eric, I should be able to click and drag over to here and release. And it won't do it. It will do it in Design View, but it's really hard because Design View messes up the Design View messes up the organization of the layout. It's really hard to get it inserted where it needs to be. Okay, so you can see that when I have Eric selected, let's click right here. Oh, now it's working a little bit better. Before it wouldn't, but now I can take Eric and I can just drag the image and place it right where the cursor is and let go. So that is yet another way to insert an image. That's really the preferable way. And now we can go ahead and select the image. We'll go back to Live View. And we have to assign to it the float right feature. So I'll click the little plus here above him. And I want to put in dot float underscore. It shows that we've already made two. We want it to be right. And now it fits perfectly. Another thing that you can do with images that you may not be aware of is that you can use them as links. So we will get to that a bit more in the next lesson, lesson 11. But right now, for example, if I wanted the image of Elaine to link to my website, I can do that. I can type it in here or paste it in there. And we can also go from Live View to Design View. And with it selected, I can go ahead and I can actually specify a target in Design View. Right now, the entire, or map rather, and also a target. Right now, the entire image is selected. But if I wanted to select just a little section of it, a little dot over her nose, that would be the map. And now I could go ahead and I can put a link in here. So let's go ahead and put the link to my personal website. So it would be http://kmart66.com. Okay. Then the next thing is, by default, with that link, if you click on it, it will replace this page with my new external website. That's not what I want. I want to open up a brand new tab. So under target, I would select blank. Okay. And you'll notice as I'm adding these elements or these features that it changes here inside the code. It automatically does that for you for the mapping of it. Now we can go back from Design View back to Live View. I'll scroll down a little bit again. Let's go to Elaine. And when I hover over her, all of the photograph except when I hover over the nose, notice that I get the little symbol of the finger, which indicates that it's going to be a link someplace else. Take me to another page, or who knows, it could pop up some text or whatever you want to do with it. So that's one way of bringing in images. Let's, excuse me again. Let's go to Green News. And this is the finished version. They bring in 2 images here. Okay. So you'll notice at the top, we have one of the skyline, and it fits really nicely. Okay. But by default, it will be too large and it will extend beyond that. And that's where I want to show you where we can add a Bootstrap class called .image responsive, and it will always, no matter how big or how small the screen is, that image will always fit inside the section that it was placed in. So let's go back to the original news here. And like I had done before, I'm going to go ahead and click inside here, make sure that that cursor is right before there. And I'm going to go back to, if I switch as I did before to design view, notice how it's really hard to see what's going on. And as soon as I put it in there, it's probably going to go over and not inside the section that I want, but it'll go over the side and insert it in the sidebar. Not until you've actually added something that you can actually use the target for that or to drag feature. So I'll go ahead and make sure again that I have the paragraph selected, and I'm going to use my arrow key here. So it's at the very beginning, and again, I'll go ahead and use insert, and I want to insert image. Okay. And I want to nest it. And under images, it's going to be the skyline image. Select it. And you can see part of that image extends way beyond the div that we have here. Okay. It extends way beyond the section that we have inserted it in. So the way around that is to insert the Bootstrap class itself. So we're going to go ahead and hit the little plus sign. And this is because it is Bootstrap. It's already built in. We don't need to add it to our own custom class. So it's going to be .image hyphen responsive. You can see that it already tells me that that's what I want. And as soon as I do that, notice that the image now shrinks and fits accordingly. Very nice. Similarly, we're going to go ahead and bring in another image down here. And we're going to use a class that we've already developed, which will be the flush right. So I'm going to go ahead and insert it. Now let me see if I can't go ahead and switch to design view. And now that I have that image already inserted there, you can see that I can, excuse me, more easily bring the image in, that the divs don't overlap quite like they did before. So now I can go to my files, and let's bring in that shopping image. I think it's this one. Farmer's market, that's it. That's what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag it in here. And it brings it in. But it's too big and it's placed on the incorrect side, it flush left. So that doesn't work for us. So let me scroll down a little bit. I don't want it to fit the entire length of this. So I'm going to click here and make sure that it's locked. And instead of 450 pixels wide, I'm going to say 150 and see how that works. And it's not linked. So I'm going to undo that, make sure that they are locked together, and let's try 150 and see what we get. It's a little small, so I'll go back up to maybe 250. Yeah, maybe 350. I want a pretty big image. There we go. Maybe 300. What can I say? I'll go back in here, use 300. Okay, now it's going to the wrong side. So let's go to, we want it to be float to the right. So I'll go ahead and select the CSS designer, and all I have to do is click here. And click add the class .float. and I want it to float right. And there you go. So we're set to go. So that's pretty much it today for lesson 10. Unless there's something else that I have. Oh, there is one more thing that we need to do. I've forgotten about this. Now that let's go back to the news finished, or not the news. We want to go back to contact us finished. And let's look and see what happens when we bring it down to the media query size that we had created. We want to make sure that the images are responsive. When we bring it all the way down to a small tablet or a phone or a large phone, it works fine. But when we go all the way down to a smartphone that's really small, notice what they have done. They've added a class for the, actually utilized the existing classes, but added it to the media query that we created for 26 pixels. And so now the image shrinks down and it is centered in here. Okay, so that's what we're going to do next, and that will be it for us today. So I'm going to go back to contact. I should save everything. I'll go ahead and save file, save all. Make sure that it's saved. Okie doke. So now when we shrink this down, notice that it floats to the right. So what we need to do is we need to create a new selector over here. So I'm going to create a new one. And this one is going to be a combo. It's going to be dot float left and float right. Dot FLT underscore, whoops, left, comma, and dot float. Because they're going to be, it doesn't matter whether they're float left or float right. On a small screen, they're all going to read the same. Float right. Hit the return key twice. And now let's go ahead and add the properties. So maximum width, we want to be in percentages, and we don't want it to be 100%. We want it to be 95%. And see how that she totally disappeared by, that's a good sign. That means because the default setting is set to 90 or 0%. And so that will come back in a minute here. There we go. So now it's coming up 95%. So now what we want to do is height is we're going to select is auto. So we want height selected to auto. Okay. And notice that fixes the squash look in her. We want the display block. So we're going to go ahead under display block. Okay. And then the last thing that we want to do is margins. We're going to do auto and 0 pixels. So 0 at the top, 0 at the bottom, and auto left and right. So to do that, I'm going to put 0 pixels. I'm going to use the shorthand PX and auto. Okie doke. And then the last thing that we want to do is under float, we want none. Okay. So now she is pretty much fixed. She's a little bit larger than I thought. Let me go ahead and check the overall size, width. Okay. Okay, that is fixed, but it's a little too big. So, oh, display. No, I did put block. Auto, height auto. Okay, well, let me see this. Oh, you know what I didn't, what I did? I screwed up. I forgot to select this one here. I need to select our media query. That's what I wanted to do. So I put it in the wrong one. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to copy, let's copy all styles. Okay. And then I'm going to remove this real quick. That goes away and that fixes that. But I need to select the media query. That's where I forgot to do it. Not paying attention here while I'm talking to all of you. So I'll go ahead and I'll add it. So this will be, again, dot float underscore left, ft, and I'll put comma float underscore right. Hit the return key. And now I can go ahead and I can right click on here and I can say paste styles. Now when I shrink it down, why aren't you changing? Oh, because, okay. This is what I mean though about troubleshooting. Give yourself adequate time to troubleshoot. And I know that this will be fixed immediately after I'm done. Float left, float right, comma. So this works just fine in the larger size, but why isn't it applying it to our media query down here? So I will do some let's try again. Let me go back to all sources, green styles, global, and let's go down to our float left and right. And I got rid of the combo one. Okay. Now let's go ahead and shrink down a little bit. No, it's not working. So let me change this here to, let's change it. I'm going to change the name of it and see if that makes a difference. I'm going to put float right first. Make sure that I have them the same. And see if that makes a difference. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it. And I'm going to go in front of this and paste with a comma. Again, it's working, but it's not working. And again, I'm adding it to the media query. So I need to figure that out. So I'll come back to you on Thursday when we begin lesson 11, and I will have it I'll troubleshoot it and figure out why it's not working for me here. Let's go back again. Works fine at the larger sizes, but when I shrink it down, 426, this is not getting as small as it should. Block 95%, that's the width. So let's bring this down a little bit more. Okay. 95%. Height, auto. Okay. Display block. Margins. padding. Well, I'm going to have to look into it. I'm sitting here with you guys staring at the screen and not resolving it. So I will have it resolved in a few moments. And after I log off, and then I'll get back to you and figure out what I did wrong for the very last step. Let me make sure that I have float none selected. Okay. Okie doke, I'm not sure. She's just a little bit too big. I mean, it would work, but it's not the desired size that I want. Okay, so that is it for today. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording, and I'm going to say goodbye. And see everybody on Thursday. If you looked at This Week in Class earlier, on the weekend, I didn't think that there would be a class or a webinar this Thursday, but I was wrong. So I've updated it and made a change to the This Week in Class. And I apologize about last week at about 9:30 before I was, while I was getting ready to start the webinar with all of you, I had a power outage, and power was not turned back on until about 3:30 in the afternoon. So that's one of the problems with technology. So again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say goodbye. I'll go ahead and I'll pause the recording, and I'll have this uploaded within about an hour to my website, or my YouTube channel. Okay? Okie doke. Bye-bye.